You are. Oh, awesome. Okay. Thank you so much, Mo, for helping out with that. So, hey, everybody, how y'all doing?
Good.
Good. Everybody ready?
Yeah.
Hello, everyone out there that is watching. I hope that you all enjoy this conversation. I appreciate you for tuning in. So today we're talking about wholeness. And the reason why I picked the word wholeness, it took me a hard time because I was trying to come up with these clever titles, right? That encompass what I'm trying to relay and convey to people, right? So I picked wholeness because I hate the idea that people don't feel whole, right? Or they feel like they have to take bits and pieces of them to fit in, right? And not just be their whole self. So that really bothers me. So I wanted to have this conversation. And first, I want you guys all to introduce yourself. We'll start here and go down, and then we'll get started with the conversation.
Okay. Brandon Lewis, Aaron Reinhardt Realtor's realtor. Been living in Midland for, 20 years altogether. I moved away a few times, but couple cool kids, lots of sports. That's about it. It's me.
Awesome.
I'm Tay Anderson. I'm mother of a 3-year-old. If you follow my Facebook, you've heard about her, Evelyn,
Yeah.
my little twin, and I've been in Midland since I was 9.
Thank you.
I'm Taylor Smith. I have lived here my whole life. I have 3 boys, Braylon 11, Porter 6, and Desmond 4, and my husband Pat.
So I'm Justin, JT Thomason. I work at Northwood University. Been in Midland for 4 years. Husband to my beautiful wife Mallory, and I have a 3 and a 5-year-old, Callie and Lainey.
Awesome. Thank you. So let's just dive into this. Each of you all were brought here for different reasons. And I'm going to just point them out because that's why I brought you here. Because I'm not afraid to talk about this. I know sometimes it's sensitive for people, but I think it's a real thing that we're experiencing in life. It's sad that we still experience it, but it is what it is. Brandon, you happen to be a Black male.
That's me.
Yeah, and you happen to be married to a woman that happens to be white, right? So when you have interracial couples, that comes with its own dynamics for other people, right?
Absolutely.
Tay, you were raised by a white family, right? And that comes with its own dynamics. Again, unfortunately, I was adopted, so I appreciate people who take in children, right? So whenever it comes with the complexity or some weird dynamic, that kind of hurts my heart, Tay, your son is biracial. I hate that term, but for lack of a better one or a different one, we're going to use that right now. But your son happens to be biracial. So that's why you're here. And JT, you are the son that's biracial. So that comes with its own dynamics, unfortunately. Like, this is all unfortunate, but it's good that we're able to talk about it so that we can shed a little light on things that you all experience so people can possibly rethink some things that they say, possibly, hopefully, that is a real thing. So let's just dive in. First, I'm gonna start with you because you were adopted as a baby.
Yeah.
Tell me about that, and tell me some of the things that you've experienced in regards to people, or just maybe some struggles you've had.
So I was talking about this, I was bouncing this off somebody for a little bit yesterday. So I was adopted at 5 weeks old, and my family is like multiracial, but like I had white parents. So when people say I don't see color, I genuinely didn't. I didn't realize that people would be like, oh, a Black person, oh, this. And I was thinking about it, and I think the first time I really was like, oh, people see me as a Black person is there was this little neighborhood girl, and she was having a birthday party. And the next door neighbor and her were joking about how at the sleepover they were going to pretend to be sisters and trick everybody who came to this party. And I was like, oh, you should let me pretend to be a sister. And she said, nobody would believe it. And I was like, why not? And then she was like, because you're Black. And I went inside and told my mom about it. Because as far as I knew, Black and white people could be brothers and sisters. And obviously I knew I was adopted, but it didn't cross my mind that I couldn't do their little prank or whatever because of my skin tone.
That's interesting.
Super interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, it was fun.
No, it's interesting because, I mean, you were just being human, right?
Like that always sticks with me. Like that really stood out. Like I was very aware of like, okay, like I'm black, I'm different. And then I feel like going forward after that, I was more aware of like people seeing me as a black person despite like being raised by white people.
Mm, mm. And what's interesting that kids are just being kids, right?
Yeah.
They're just stating what they observe.
Yeah.
They mean nothing by it.
Yeah.
But that really stuck out with you. Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. So Brandon, tell me some things that you may have experienced during this journey that you've been on. And two, you also grown up in Midland, so that's its own other thing
Absolutely.
as a black male. So
Well, I was born and raised in Flint, and then we moved here when I was 11. So I think I did almost the reverse. I was pretty much all around black people at all times. Then I moved here, super culture shock. Things were a little bit different, just the way I spoke, the way I talked, the way I interacted. And I think probably for the first 2 years, I pretty much, like every weekend, Mom, can we move back? Mom, can we move back? And then I decided, okay, I'm the black kid. I'm gonna fully embrace being the black kid. So I think I went a little over the top, like way over the top.
and when you say that, you almost were, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you were kind of like fitting, acting out stereotypes.
By far.
Okay,
By
because
far.
that's what I was hearing, but I wanted to make sure I was
By
okay.
far. I think it was bits and pieces of me,
Yeah,
but it was definitely highlighted.
yeah,
A lot of it was celebrated. So
Yeah.
as they clap, you keep going.
yeah.
So yeah, I think that was kind of my biggest thing. I was the black kid. You know, the one thing that I always say about my time in Midland is my age category. For some odd reason, there was a lot of us in my age category.
Yes, there is a group. Yes, yeah.
So I was never by myself.
Yeah,
There was always somebody else in my class. So, you know, during the MLK, you know, we could look at each other and be like,
See, they just looked at me in the class.
exactly. It was nice to have somebody to, you know,
yeah,
X, Y, Z. But I will say, I know my son, it seems like, Tay's son's the same age too.
Mhm.
It seems like they definitely talk way more about politics and things like that. For me, at that time, it was music, girls, and sports.
yeah.
That was it.
Yeah.
And nothing further than, you know, my shoes are cooler than yours aren't. That was.
Which is typical of kids, right? But these kids now are different. These kids are different. They are different.
They're
Yeah.
way different.
Yeah, they're more exposed and aware of things than we were.
They had more access to information at all
Yes,
times.
we were outside playing, running around in the dirt. I mean, you know, I was anyway, climbing trees. I was a tomboy, so. So anyway, okay, and so then talk about the dynamics with, you know, being in an interracial marriage.
So me and my wife have been together since high school. So I think when we first got together, I paid attention
Yeah,
to the others.
yeah,
You know, you have these moments, you know, you got the old couples staring at you at dinner or things like that. For me, once again, I dive in. Now I have to hold her hand. Now I have to kiss her. I'm going to go way over the top just to make everyone uncomfortable about that situation. It's been almost 20 years at this point, so I'm not, you know, I have a rule. If you don't pay bills at our house, you don't get a say-so. So
exactly.
you know, that's
Which is so difficult for some people, right? I mean, it's especially, I think, now correct me if I'm wrong, you know, because I lived in the city and I've also lived here for quite some time. When you are surrounded around predominantly Black people, it's a little bit different, right?
Yes,
Because I'm gonna be honest with you, I even have hard times with how to approach a situation. Because I've had people where because I talk to everybody, anybody don't know, I say hi to everybody, literally. I'd be like, hey, how you doing? Hey, I don't care who it is. But I found that sometimes if I say hi to someone that's in an interracial marriage, if it's a Black man and a white woman, sometimes the white woman kind of looks at me like, what you trying to do? And I'm like, oh, I'm just saying hi. You know what I mean? I'm just saying hi. So then I try to sometimes not say anything because I don't want to seem like that, but then that looks like I don't approve of it.
Yeah.
So it's this weird way so it's like a very awkward thing. So I do this like really weird thing when I pass my couple sometimes because I want people to know like, I don't care.
I think it's the same thing as just being a male too. I may know her, but I don't know him. I try to make sure I go, hey, my man, you know what I mean? It's like,
Yes,
no, I hope you don't think, anything between, me and her. So.
No, it's the truth, because when my husband first moved here, I mean, I had already lived here forever, and I knew everybody, right?
Right.
So it was really interesting, people that always spoke to me or even hugged me, right? They would be like, "What are you doing?" When he was around, I'm like, "Dude, like we know each other." Yeah, or our kids have known each other. You know what I mean? Like, so I understand that. So, okay, thank you. So, Tay, tell me some of the issues or concerns you've had.
So many.
Yeah.
I think I have a perspective because I went through Midland Public Schools, so I'm going to talk about the schools because that's primarily where I'm seeing most of the issues that we're dealing with.
Sure.
So I went through MPS and never would have known some of the stuff that students of color go through because my time here was easy. I coasted, I even got in trouble and you would have never known. Like
Yeah.
it was easy. So my son's in 5th grade and up until this point, like some of the things that he's dealing with, he's been called the N-word multiple times. He's been told to go back to where all the brown people are from. He's been chanted at All Lives Matter. All Lives Matter.
Oh, really? Wow. I didn't know
So when
that.
you're talking about like politics,
In
it,
fifth grade.
4th, but still
Wow.
continuing like this year. And so I feel this like sense of like fight
Yeah.
all the time. Like it never shuts off. So I'm super hyper aware of protecting him because I feel like while I have him here, he's in my bubble, right? I had somebody say to me one time, oh, well, Bray's different because you and Pat are raising him. And I was like, I'm sorry, I'm not entirely sure what that means. Like,
Yeah.
because when he leaves here, he's still gonna be a black man,
Yeah.
regardless of who raised him. So I feel this like sense of like protecting while he's here, and I know that's not realistic forever.
Yeah.
So that's scary. But there are so many things I could touch on. I take up all your time, but
No, we'll come back around to some things.
Yeah.
I mean, because we're here to talk. Because again, that was probably a friend that said that, right?
yeah, well, yeah, sort of. Not
Well,
more.
They thought.
But still,
Yeah.
that was someone that you thought was someone you were safe with.
That has happened so many times.
Yeah.
Family, friends, and Pat and I are kind of to the point where we're like, we're good. We used to be kind of scared to like sever relationships with people, and now we're like,
Oh, I cut people.
Bye.
Yeah.
Not cut
Bye.
people. I cut people off. I should finish that sentence. Not I cut people.
because what does it say to my son if I sit back and say, oh, Bray, you didn't
Exactly.
mean it, buddy.
Yep, you're complicit in it if
No,
you
thank you.
don't.
Right.
Just admit.
Yep.
And what value those people actually bring?
Yeah.
Right. Once you say things like that, I mean, and we'll get into this. I don't want to, because you guys are here to talk. But when people tell me that they don't know how to stand up for people that are going through stuff, because they're afraid of, repression or whatever happens, it's like, why? I mean, seriously, and I get it, I do get it. But for me, you're not gonna be in my area and I see you get disrespected and I just stand there and be like, I don't know what to say. I definitely know what to say, and I'll just take whatever comes with that. And that person that did it doesn't want to be around me anymore. I'm okay with that. Like they bring no value to me. So that's just, and I know everybody's not like that, so I'm not judging people that can't do it. It's just like, say something.
Yeah.
Because we have to. So JT, share some of the things that you have dealt with.
Okay. I guess from my father is black and my mother is white. Just growing up, being a mixed person, I struggled because I was not white. And there's that idea of like, if you are, you got that one drop, then you cannot identify with us. And on the other end, you have with black people, you're not one of us either. And so it's kind of this battle, I think, which obviously molded me to have the perspective that I do have, but it's I'm fighting the same struggles as the black people, but I'm not included with all of them. And obviously I'm not included here either. I've grown up seeing hatred. I think I guess for context, like when we had lunch before, I think that I shared with you, like I grew up afraid of Black women, which means I was afraid of certain people in my father's side of the family because I've seen my mother being abused verbally, physically. I've heard stories from my parents about even when they found out that, my mother was pregnant with my father's baby, that she was being abused, in turn, hitting me in as well. So I've wrestled with some of that stuff as well.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense, right? You were a child.
Yeah.
And what you saw put some fear in you for whatever reason. So I think that makes perfect sense. And I like that you touched on the idea that in some Black circles, if you speak a certain way, or if you do certain things, or if you even have white friends, right, you're not accepted. And then we obviously ain't white, so it's like this weird balance that sometimes people and I know my children experienced that when they first went off to college, and they're like, I mean, just like myself, real open and talking to people and stuff. And some people, like even when my oldest son went to Delta and started playing ball there, most of the team was Black, right? And he came home and he was like, man, you gotta make sure you have a haircut around them. You gotta make sure you got lotion. Living here, you can kind of get away with stuff. Yeah, you know what I mean? But I mean, even when they were younger, when I would take them back home to Cincinnati, they would have fresh gear, fresh, haircut, because I knew that it was just a different environment, and different expectations, right? Vaseline, they be sliding all over the place because that was making sure they weren't ashy. So I understand that. I mean, even for myself, I like a lot of different things, and I don't care like what class it goes into. Whatever I like, I like. Who I like is who I like. So, but I know sometimes people will have an issue with, oh, you think you white? Actually, I don't. You must think that. And what does that even mean? You know what I'm saying? What is white?
That's literally the story of my life.
Yeah, so talk about it. Tell me if I like.
I was thinking when Brandon was talking and he's like, I really leaned into being like Black. I was like, I never even had like the opportunity. Like I connect with him to being like, with the Black people is always immediately like, why you talk white? Like I remember specifically the first time, again, I guess lots of childhood trauma coming out, but the first time someone was like, why do you talk like that? And I was like, what? So then I went to my mom, so I was probably like 11, and I was like, that little Black girl said like I talk white? What does that mean? And then my mom is like, very educated white woman, so of course she was like, it's called ebonics. And when they said, what is ebonics? And she was like, it's kind of like slang and this and that, like, like the accent, like Black people talk like that. I was like, yeah, I don't have that. Like, we're in Michigan, you know what I mean? So I don't talk like that. But then at the same time, like, with the white people, you were very much like, oftentimes their Black friend. So I felt like some of the closest friends I've ever had literally were mixed. Like, I have two girls specifically, like, there's one girl I joke with, and we always say we're each other's first Black friend because we met in 6th grade. And she was mixed and lived with her white mom, and then I was light-skinned and lived with my white mom. And we were obsessed with each other. Like, to this day, we were on the phone last week, and we would, like, live at each other's house because finally it felt like somebody got us, and, like,
Connected.
she struggled with, like, her hair, but my mom would, like, brush her hair out for her and, like, braid my hair and stuff like that. And, like, we genuinely bonded over being, like, misfits. Like, we didn't know where to go.
Yeah.
It's really interesting because like that makes me think of like this experience that I had where, my father being a Black man can teach me how to be Black, right? He can teach me how to deal with the police, like in having these conversations about how to be a Black man, but at the same time, I'm having these struggles with what I'm not, right? So I have my mom that you don't need to be taught how to be white, right? You just kind of are. You have your dad who's teaching you how to be Black. Like, who is here to teach me how to be me, right?
Yeah.
And that comes back to the wholeness, right? I mean, both parts of that is you. And, I know oftentimes I talk to people who are, biracial that feel conflicted, even like when it's time to select, when they say you select your color, and, you are automatically assumed to put Black, right?
Yeah.
Even though half of you is white. I mean, did you ever have those struggles or thoughts or?
But yeah, I think we've progressed far enough in the system where we are able to check, but for a long time, I'm sure you've shared, like, we were not able to select, like, multiracial is not a thing, right?
Is that on there now? Is that?
Some,
I think
is it?
some say
So-
like.
Or can you
mulatto
check
for
more
a
than
while.
one?
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
I heard
yeah,
mulatto,
it
yeah.
depends on the surveys
Yeah.
or whatever,
Okay.
but my most recent was when I was in Mount Pleasant. I was going through the background screening for, coaching the, Sacred Heart track team. So I went to the police station and it literally had, and this would have been 2015, 2016, somewhere around there. And so they had like white, black, Latino, or Hispanic, I believe.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
I'm like looking at the lady like, white? And I slid it to her, right? Cause like, it's just like a social experiment, right? Slid it to her and she like literally looked at me. I don't know where the camera's right there. She like looked at the sheet, looked at me and said, try again.
Oh.
Oh, wow.
And so like,
Yikes.
I went back and I like started talking cause I'm like, wow. Like,
So even in that moment,
Wow.
you were not able to select, wow, that's interesting.
No.
Well, it goes back to that whole 1 drop, 2 drops,
Yeah.
thing. And, which we know that out in society, that is real, right? Okay, that 1, 2 drop is real. When people see a little bit of tint, you are assumed, right? And sometimes treated a certain way because of that. So Tay, tell me, you are raising a Black male. What type of conversations have you had with him? Because for him to experience things like being called the N-word, and I'm sure my children have been called things too. Some stuff they shared with me, but a lot of things that happened here in Maryland, they didn't.
Yeah.
Other people shared it with me.
Yeah.
Because they knew I would go up to that school. The school knew
Yeah.
Mrs. Walker because,
I'm ready.
I was gonna
yes.
say, I fight kids, don't call my kid no in there, I don't care. I
Oh.
fight kids, don't call my kid no in there.
And not only did they know me for my kids, but for other people's kids.
Yeah.
There was other
Yeah.
children that, their parents maybe were not as involved for whatever reasons. So I took them too. It was like, you're not gonna treat them this way. And it was just, I have so many stories that I could tell of what happened when they were there. But anyway,
Yeah.
tell me how you are helping your son, like, through this, because this has gotta be,
It's
hard.
an interesting situation. So for perspective, my husband is also white, so he doesn't have a Black role model really in his life, at least in the home.
Yeah.
There are lots of Black people in our lives that are awesome role models, but not in our home.
Yeah.
So my husband and I just do a lot of listening. We try to educate ourselves, because I understand that in order for me to parent him effectively, and for him not to have immense trauma when he leaves my house, I have to be educated.
Yeah.
And I have to be his biggest advocate.
Yeah.
And I've had to learn, like you said, people not knowing how to speak up. Like I'm loud.
Yeah.
I've always known how to speak up, but I'm learning how to be an effective speaker upper, if that makes sense.
Yeah, very much.
And to show my son that while he's with me and forever, no matter where he is, I'm always ready to have his back. And I always am willing to be learning about his experiences. Because
Sure.
like I said, some things I'm like, that happens? Like that happens. How is that happening?
But it's awesome you're educating yourself. Like my
Thanks.
mom was good at, I remember, I always knew who Martin Luther King Jr. was. Like my mom always tried to educate. Like we went to Meijer one time and this lady was really snotty. I wanted like another sample and she was so mean about it. And my mom, I don't remember what she said, but my mom felt like she was being racist and lost her mind to the point I was
Embarrassed?
Do you know what I mean? Well,
Ray doesn't tell me things sometimes, 'cause she's like, Mom, I know what you're gonna do.
Yeah,
I'm like, but I
no,
need
that's
to do
awesome.
it.
That's awesome.
Pull that mic up a little
Closer to me.
to make sure that it catches your voice. Just pick it
I
up.
don't know what to do.
Yeah.
You said something about your identity and trying to figure out where you fit, and I see Braylon, and you probably see Jax, probably not Z yet, but Jax walking through that. I see Bray really honing in as a Black boy. I'm so proud of him because just in the last probably year since his N-word debacle at school in 4th grade, I think he's becoming an advocate for himself, for
That's good.
LGBTQ, for his folder at school is like covered in like pride stuff, Black Lives Matter, and he's not afraid. I'm so proud of him because he's now learning to also become an advocate for himself
Well, you're teaching
and others. I hope so.
No, you
I
are.
hope so.
No, you are. I mean, that's just a real thing,
Yeah,
right?
that's awesome.
Kids learn to advocate when they see someone advocate for them.
Yeah.
Right? If you feel like, or if you act like you're kind of ashamed or don't know how to deal with it, they're not going to either. And I like what you touched on because about how as your child you're gonna always stand up for him. I was talking to a couple people the other day, and I talked about that. When people say they don't know how to stand up for different racial injustices. I always ask people the question, or kind of throw out the thought that, but when it comes to our children, we don't think twice. We don't think twice. We don't care about the repercussions. We don't care about how people will view us. We are ready to go there about our children or people that we care about. But it seems like, and even animals. I mean, I see people go crazy about animals. And I'm saying, where is the delay and disconnect when it comes to racial, injustice? Like, I just don't understand where that fear where it comes from.
Yeah.
So,
And I think like for me, I have to be really clear with Braylon, like I'm sticking up for you, but I'm also like sticking up for everyone who looks like you, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's you. He's my like primary focus, but it's not just him, right? And so I think that sometimes that gets lost in translation, like it's not just Braylon that I care about. This is a problem specifically in Midland, but also, I mean, everywhere, right?
all over.
Yeah.
Brandon, so how do you help, your children, and, your youngest one, he's kind of still living life, right?
He's had zero issues so far.
Yeah,
Kindergarten.
yes.
Yeah, Jax went through the same thing, the same time Bray was going through in the same school.
Oh, okay.
So, a lot of conversations that I didn't think I was going to have so early, I guess.
Yeah.
I was about his age when I got here, and I think I was trying to mirror my experiences and who I am through him. I started out fighting everybody when I got there, so nobody really said anything to me for the most part.
Yeah.
That's not him.
Right.
He's a very sweet kid.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He doesn't want to rock the boat.
Yeah.
Which I think also is it's kind of a Midland thing. It's let's not rock the boat. All is well.
And I rock so many boats. I rock boats, but again, I didn't grow up here, and that's one thing. So go ahead.
So yeah, I think a lot of conversation, learning, a lot of videos, and like you said, he was taking back the flame. He's surrounded by more Black people over the last little bit, just trying to find himself. You know what I mean? And I even told him, I think sometimes I code switch so much I get confused. You know what I mean?
And we can talk about code switching.
We can talk about it.
Yeah.
I am the code switcher. It's literally that's how I eat. I go inside people's home and I'm the happiest high-fivey person you've ever seen.
Can I interrupt really quick though? When we closed out my house, we had to do the final inspection, and it was during the Black Lives Matter riots, and it was just me, Brandon, and Evelyn, and there was zero code switching. Like,
No, but you know what? I tell people that all the time, that when we are in our own spaces, right? And not that people don't like to, go into everybody's spaces and stuff, but it is different.
Yeah.
I just came back from Cincinnati. I was there for a few days, and that's where I was born and raised. And I didn't realize, and I think I mentioned this on our the community conversations thing, that I didn't realize how heavy I felt. Like, I didn't realize that. And it's not even like in a bad way where I don't want to do what I'm doing anymore, but it was like the idea that I could just get up and just be. I didn't have to like think about it, if that makes sense. Yeah. I was just, you hear the vibration of the city, everybody's out doing their thing, and you just are existing, right? And when I came back to Midland, going back into doing what I was doing, catching up with work and stuff, I realized, I'm like, wow, you really do have to be a little bit more conscious of just who you are.
There's two things that I do. My barber stays in Saginaw and in Detroit. and I have days, and I'll just tell my wife, I can't be here today.
Yeah, and that's sad, but it's the truth.
I do. Or I'll shut it down and people won't see me for a very long
Yeah.
time. And it weirds a lot of people out
Yeah,
because they're like, no, you're so outgoing. I'm like, I gotta protect my mental health, especially depending on what's going on in the world. Because I'm like, I can't have a side. I don't want to be the black advocate today.
yeah.
If you ask me about X, Y, and Z, and it comes out the wrong way, I may say something and or do something that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's just one of those things where,
But that's what it is, we have to explain our presence, like if there's something I remember that church shooter, and I didn't even know it happened, I still worked night audit at my old job, and one of the morning ladies came in, and she goes, Tamara, I just wanna let you know, I respect black people, I care about black people, that's terrible what happened. And I was like, what? And she was like, did you hear about all those black people that got killed? And I was like, no, but why would the first thing you do, to greet me in the morning is to be like, yo, not racist, girl, with you, and that,
And I think
sometimes you
people-
don't wanna have to explain
I
or
think people
justify
mean
your
well.
existence.
I think they mean well.
They always mean well.
No, I do. I think people, I think it's a connection thing. I think some people it's a connection thing, right? They feel like, because people have said to me, I don't know what to say, right? I don't know, should I say something, should I not say something? So I get that, but I also understand that. I mean, I did not realize how, it just was a heaviness. Because when I go back into the spaces here, even though I'm gonna be myself, it still comes with a observation of okay, who's in the room? How will I be received? How should I deliver this? Because I'm loud, I talk, assertive, but people can see it as aggressive. When I get excited, I get loud. My face does this, and I do all this, and people look at that like you're upset. I'm like, honey, this is me excited. I'm excited right now. So, but when I was back home, it was just effortless.
Easy.
Yeah, and I didn't even realize that I felt that much until I came back. And even when you say that's not even it's a negative being here. That's not even it's not the negative, it's just the awareness that's energy that you have to expel out, right? That energy of being I'm aware that things are different.
Yeah.
So
It's the fitting, that fitting in versus belonging, right? When you're in a place where you belong, you don't have to use that energy to assess and wonder, am I, because if you cross your homie, they're gonna let you know, and then you go talk about it, ain't gonna be no problem.
and you
Yeah.
still gonna be friends,
Right,
and you're going
right.
about your
But when you're in this area where you have to code switch, aka fit in, that works. How do I mold myself to fit in there?
Box.
And it's energy, right?
It
It's
is.
exhausting sometimes, and yeah.
I think my fit in is, I want to be nobody. That's what I like about, I'll go down to Detroit and walk in the mall, no one's looking at me.
because everybody looks I get what you're saying.
I don't want to be seen, I don't want to talk, I want to shop.
Yeah.
That was it.
No,
I just
okay.
want to shop.
I'm looking at Midland ooh, yeah.
It's somebody saying,
Oh, me too. I see somebody across the way. I'm like, and they're looking oh my God, what's wrong with you? It's a familiarity, right? Where you feel connected just because, right? And that's why when people talk about representation, they don't understand it. It has nothing to do with, stuff being plastered all over the walls, all that. It's just that connectedness. You know what I mean? Where you feel, yeah. I don't know.
Braylon has a black teacher this year, and
Just
she
pause there.
Yeah.
That's what's happening.
this year
A
was
black
a
teacher.
freaking miracle from the heavens,
What
right?
school is that?
Adams.
Oh.
She's brand new, but she is also biracial. She went through Midland Public. Shout out, Alicia Jones.
Oh, I'm actually,
Yeah.
yes, okay.
So what I see from Braylon this year in how confident he is and how supported he feels, it's like mind blowing. He's never, ever, ever had a principal, a teacher. I don't think anyone that's looked like him or experienced the life that he's living
Yeah.
ever. And I'm like, this is a whole new world for him.
Yeah.
It's crazy. I never thought about it.
There's nothing like support and love from a black woman,
Yeah.
ever.
Yeah.
It's a big hug. It's,
Yeah.
and kind of like you said,
Especially when you're
you,
like.
you are protected.
Yes.
You know what I
yeah,
mean?
Yeah,
You know things aren't gonna go too far left and or right.
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
good.
yeah, especially in certain spaces where they know that you need them to be there.
It takes a look from her, and he feels like
Mhm.
I got
she's
you.
got me. Mhm.
Exactly, and that's why I would show up at the schools. That's why, because even if it wasn't just for my children, it was for other children whose parents weren't quite, there that way. I remember very quickly a story of a gentleman that grew up with my children. He had, I don't want to get into the resource officers because all of them are not like this, but there were a few that seemed to single out certain kids,
Mhm.
okay, from certain demographics and from certain classes and things of that nature. So anyway, there was a young man that got in some trouble over the summer, and this officer made it his business to find out about something that happened over the summer. Now, mind you, this was school time, that was over. He made a point of it. Long story short, he was after school, they were playing football, practicing football, and a police officer showed up at the school. Now, my children called me, and this wasn't even one of my children, but they called me because they know how I am, and they called me, but, and said, Mom, so-and-so, the police officer is talking to him, and guys know how Millen High, the football field is down here, and he was talking to him at the top of the hill.
Mhm.
And by itself. And I had a problem with that. Because one, he was a minor, and then two, I just know how things can go, right? So when I called to speak to the athletic director and ask questions about it, I asked a question. I said, why was he by himself, the police officer, as a minor? Oh, Would you let your child go up there? If it was somebody else's child that you knew you guys played golf together or go for the Dow or whatever, you would be right up there with them asking, what's going on? What do you need with him? Why are you talking to him? None of that happened with this kid. So stuff like that, I don't remember why I got on that, but it really bothers me. And it's like, they need advocacy and you need someone to sit there and give you that warm hug. That's basically what that's what we're going with that.
Yeah.
One of the things too is that you bring up, and I love the conversation, but like you're supporting, but like it takes a village, right? And it's that has never changed.
Yeah.
But people that look like us don't have that village, right? Or they're looking at us differently. It's like
So you
are. There's one.
So you're
Right?
talking
It's
about
not built
biracial
in the
children?
system. Black.
Okay,
and
okay.
People of color. Right?
Okay, I just want to make sure I'm
It's
clear
just,
with you.
yeah. People of color, like it's, when we talk about systems, right, we can look at individuals, individual administrators, like, oh, I'm not racist, yes, but we talk about, right, like how the systems are.
Yeah.
And if you don't know, like you said, like, there's no love love comparable to a Black woman, right? Like, the administrators don't know what support to give. Educating yourself is so important,
Yeah.
right? So like the village is not equipped to help people that, like people of color.
Yeah.
Can I piggyback off that real quick?
Sure, please.
So when everything happened last year with my son, and he, just for perspective, he was called the N-word like 12 times in one day. It was really bad. It was
Wow.
really bad. The principal ended up calling my son into a room with the student who called him the N-word and that student's mother. Without me even knowing. I didn't even know at this point.
And see, my kid, let me tell you, I'll let you finish your story.
Yeah.
From day one, they tried that with my children at one point in time, and I told them, don't ever have my children in a room with you, an officer, whoever, by themselves, ever. Yes,
I was like, what?
no, because that is, for one, you're not supposed to do that.
No. and I didn't find out till like, that was like a Thursday. I didn't find out till like the following Tuesday. And then I was getting more information, and like his teacher said to him like, oh, just make sure you're not instigating his behavior.
I can't wait to watch this back and see my reactions.
So like when you say there's not, the people aren't educated in how to handle, I'm not asking for people to be perfect, I'm really
Sure.
not, but like, we've gotta be better. Like especially when we're a 87% white town, like people have to be better when they're in leadership roles, especially in our schools working with our kids. Like
And
it's
just be humane,
wild.
right? I mean,
Oh,
that's my thing is that, you know, because when we have these kind of conversations, I never wanted to come across where it's like, you hate white people or you're white people bashing. Has nothing to do with that. Has nothing to do with that. This is a thing where you're talking about your experiences, what you've experienced. And the part that I have a problem with is when people try to dismiss the experience as if it is not a real thing,
Absolutely.
you know?
happens so often.
I mean, have you guys experienced that here where people, because like for me, let me give you an example, then I want you guys to tell me if you've had that happen, where it was a restaurant here that every time I went, they acted a certain way to me, right? Gave them a couple chances because I'm like, okay, maybe it's just a bad day. Because I mean, I understand that because I used to wait tables years ago and I get it, okay? I'm like, wait a minute, they're treating me this way each time. So I said, I'm not going there anymore. And somebody wrote something about it online and I kind of said, you know, I'm not going there. And everybody chimed in and said, well, every time we go, they're great to me.
Yeah, that's what a big part of it, like growing up mixed, Black, having mixed kids, it's the microaggressions. Like I got my nails done and so they're Asian and I was talking, the one boy is like Americanized, like he grew up in Midland. So we were just talking and I was like, you know, he's like, it's not always like outright racism, it's like little stuff. And I was like, yeah, the little microaggressions. And he was like, I speak a second language. He was like, so I always get the people like, how do you say this? He's like, how would you say my name? And he's like, I even tell him like, what's your name? And I'll be like, Eric. And he's like, and I just say Eric. Do you know what I mean? Like, don't act like I'm some foreign thing or like some alien. Or he was like, my mom has a language barrier. And he was like, so I've just grown up watching people, instead of using patience, they just get louder and angrier. And he was like, so even as a kid, he had the opposite where he'd have to advocate for his mom. He's like, I remember I'd go to the doctor and I'd say, English isn't her first language, please be patient. He goes, and their tone would change every time. And he was like, it's just Midland. Like he was so frustrated about it. And I was like, oh, that's funny. I'm gonna do the same. We'll be like, talk about stuff like that. So I'm happy to share your story, you know, but that like I dropped Evelyn off at like school one day and she's little teeny and her dad is mixed and then, so his mom is white. So she has white in her. So she has like this really cool coils. Like she has the coolest hair and I put oil in it and cream and it looked so pretty and I dropped her off and the lady goes, oh, I see we're doing crazy hair today. So I said, what's crazy about her wearing her natural hair down? Because like, I've seen little white kids with crazy hair and crusted on snot and you don't say nothing about, oh, you can't run a comb through your hair. Evelyn's hair is crazy and an afro. They never said it again. Every time I dropped her off after that, they'd be, look at those beautiful curls. And I was like, yeah.
Now you say.
Yeah, yeah.
So how do we educate people? Because, you know, I never want to come across, you know, just with what we could consider like negativity, right? What's some solutions? How do we, and from what, okay, so while I'm asking this question, I just want to be totally transparent. Sometimes I'm tired of educating people.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
okay, and my thing is, it's only because I feel like when we start, when we're doing this educating, it's always at the ground level. Like, we're still at the lower level of it, like elementary, and I'm saying, can we move up a little bit to talk about something else? But the fact that I'm still at this lower level of educating, it's exhausting. It's exhausting, but I do wanna ask you guys, how do we navigate through this? Because I'm just kind of glued to the fact that I'm just gonna show up how I am and be who I am.
Mhm.
And if people like it, they do. If they don't, they don't.
I don't know what the answer is. I know we talked about this during the beginning of Black Lives Matter. My phone's ringing off the hook. Hey, Brent, I appreciate it. By about the third or fourth call, I'm like, I'm dealing with my own stuff right now.
Yeah, right.
I don't have time to be your teacher. On top of that,
Yeah.
most of the people who were calling me were pretty highly educated. So
That's
I'm
what
like,
I'm saying, like, I don't
I'm
think
pretty sure you can read a book.
that's how I feel, like, you have an obligation to teach yourself, surround yourself with people.
But I think, and it's gonna come off negative, but I think those phone calls were for them to feel better about themselves, not to actually do the work.
Well, it's true.
It's like this, yeah,
So I was like,
white
No,
saying.
sometimes it is true.
I'm good, which had me go into, as we call it at our house, black man mode. Nope, leave me alone.
Yeah.
I come, I do my thing.
Well, it's called self-care. It's called self-care. No, seriously, I mean, you know, and that's the thing is that, you know, when I've taught on this, tell people, you know, oftentimes when people grab the signs and make the protest signs, that's for them to feel better, right? To feel like they've done something, and then you're able to go home, you can put the sign down and blend right back into society, right? You know, we can't do that. So it's this thing where, you know, I asked this question because I should ask the question, but I also I'm torn with it, with the educating part, because it's like, if we want to go a little higher, I have no problem with that. Like dig a little bit deeper, but that like elementary level of just basic, oh, because this is what you should do. Oh, I'm a human. Oh, I should be able to be this way and not have to explain. I don't have a lot of energy.
Like Brandon said, I don't want to sound negative, but like, I'm done educating. You have access to every answer to every question in the entire world at your fingerprints. Like, it's not my job to teach you.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not my job, do better, like, educate yourself, surround yourself with people, learn different cultures. And if you don't want to, fine, that's cool, you don't have to, but don't ask me stupid questions.
Yeah.
Like during the Black Lives Matter stuff, I was at work one day, and this guy came up to me, and he was like, this guy who worked there, and he was like, hey, he was like, all these protests, and I was like, all right, here it goes, because I'm very vocal, so like, it got to the point where like, people at work like usually wouldn't speak politics, or like, they would like avoid, if something big happened, everybody was tense. So, he's like, you know, I understand, they're upset. He was like, but wanting to like get rid of the cop dog from Paw Patrol, do you remember that rumor?
Oh yeah.
And I was like, yo, Chase, like, first of all, Evelyn loves Paw Patrol, like, she's like, stop it. Like, and also, I'm not like the voice of the Black people, like, I drove here, I'm listening to Miley Cyrus Party in the USA. Don't come at me, do you know what I mean? Like, I'm like, on behalf of the Black delegation of Midland, we feel like, right, I was like, everyone was watching Paw Patrol yesterday, stop it, you know, you don't come to me with your Black people questions, it's not my job to answer them.
Yeah.
It's
yeah,
not.
Yeah.
You know, like, it's not my problem, it's yours.
I can't imagine how exhausting. I'm serious. Like, I think about that sometimes, and I'm like, people are sorry to be negative. Like, I don't understand. I know people mean well, but like, how dense?
Yeah.
Right? Like, come on, guys. Like, let's hit Google. Let's read a book.
But I think it's what you said. We're still talking low level.
So
If you
low.
call me and say, okay, Brandon, how can we, you know, get more Black jobs here? Or
Sure, yeah.
you're still going, why do they feel that way?
Yeah.
Or what's going, you got the internet, don't you?
Right.
Yeah.
Do that.
Or just like just use common sense. Like for me, it's just so simple, especially when I see people protest about animals, right? And I'm not saying like I'm not.
No, but I know what you mean.
But I'm just saying, like
People-
like people really go
Yes.
all the way
They'll
in
go harder for their dog than
about
they will a
animals,
Black man.
and I'm saying, you know, use that same like where is this disconnect?
Yeah.
And I know it's an indoctrination. Like, you know, people have been taught certain things and to see things different. I know that
I
because
shut it last,
it's a
but
part of
it's
the
true.
fabric of the United States.
I
I'm
see
saying-
more people will turn out for a dog than
By
an
far.
unarmed Black man, like straight up.
So JT, what do you, I
There's-
know, because you work in because you work with all different type of people in your position. So how do you navigate through? Because we all have learned, I mean, even say with, you know, with you having Brad, I mean, we've all learned how to navigate through these structures, right? So how do you do it?
One day at a time.
Yeah.
I think I like to keep in mind how we learn things.
Yeah.
And I think what we read about then also has to be processed with somebody, and then it also has to be kind of this like socially reinforced too. And so while I won't have the energy all the time, I always try not to shut somebody down who is brave enough to ask a question.
That's fair, yeah.
And I will give them the energy that I have. And that, at that moment, if you haven't taken what I've said as, you know, this is JT speaking, this is not on behalf of
No,
all
you're fine.
multiracial people, this is not on behalf of all Black people, everybody's an individual, everybody's an individual. And so I consider that in the learning, right? It's not
Sure.
just reading, it's reading and then okay, how can I apply these principles? How can I process this?
So do you ever feel like from my experience personally, like I feel like when people ask questions, like oftentimes it's to like debate me, like they're not
Yeah.
actually trying to educate themselves, they wanna be combative if I'm like, yeah, I think racism still exists in Midland. Well, no, it doesn't, cause then it's like, then why did you bring this up to me? Do you know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
what I usually get, so I think that's where the
I think
exhaustion.
that's.
If somebody genuinely was like, I'm trying to do better, cause I have had that, where they're like,
Oh,
I
sure.
didn't understand, I didn't know this, what should I be doing?
Yes, and I
Then
think,
one hundred percent, like, how can I help you, like, and even then, I feel like, since my experience is so unique, I can only really speak like on my own experiences as well, do you know what I mean? I don't know how much I
but I
can
think that's,
offer.
go ahead, Brandon, but I think that's fair, yeah.
I think that's exactly where I've been baited too
Yeah.
many times
Yeah,
that I'm just shut down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everyone, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And my thing is, it's empathy. I'm not a gay man, but, you know, if I hear LGBTQ people say, da, 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 I can process in my head and go,
apply.
oh,
yeah,
all right, y'all, we shouldn't do,
yeah,
it seems quite simple.
common sense, yeah.
But for
that-
some odd
But I
reason,
think that goes back to, and I don't wanna get too deep, cause I can go really deep, but I think that goes back to the indoctrination, right? When you have been told and shown through all sorts of systems that a certain type of demographic does not require, or they should not get the same type of respect or equality, then it's like subconscious sometimes. It really is, and I think some people don't even realize that they've been indoctrinated, right? So this is not making excuses or anything, but
Yeah, sure.
I just think it's really a science to this, right? That people really have been shown to care more about a certain community or the dog than sometimes a certain type of demographic. I really believe that, and I think that it's just like all throughout structures. So again, people who genuinely want to know, I talk all the time. I have no problem talking to people. But when it gets into a thing where it's just an argument or I want to prove you wrong because, because I'm black. So if you're trying to prove me wrong, then I shouldn't be
Yeah,
treated a
they
certain
try to
way.
like minimize our own experiences, that's like what I feel like, they try to like tell me like, no, you didn't experience it this way.
Because
not right.
they did, and that's the part
Yeah.
that's so interesting. to me.
Like you said, while the restaurant's always nice to me, like that's a lot of what we did.
Yeah,
We do that in education too, so
yeah,
like being at Northwood University, thinking about free enterprise.
and JT is speaking on behalf of himself, not Northwood University. Go ahead.
That is correct, but they value free enterprise
Yeah.
and entrepreneurship and personal responsibility and things, which I think is great, right?
Yeah.
But it's also connected to this conservative mindset. And then when you think of capitalism as an example, right, and the issues that it causes for people that aren't white males, right? They're seeing their population thrive. Yes, capitalism is the way, we know, right? We're not looking at things from the education standpoint either, from a sense of curiosity.
Yeah,
Let me learn about your experience. Like, let me hear what you were experiencing versus I'm listening and here's some data that says you're wrong. I'm listening and let me educate you on how you need to make different decisions, right?
yeah,
We need to, on all sides, be curious. And this is why I'm participating in this and think this is awesome, just to be curious about people's experiences. And then it goes back to exactly what Brandon was saying with empathy.
yeah,
Right? So we've talked,
across the board.
we
Yeah.
talked already about like, trying to find where we fit in, right? Like white side, black side, but how many people have been in a situation where they were trying to fit in or they felt like they, right? That's empathy. It doesn't have to be just race. We're talking about race, but like apply that to
Across the board,
across the
yes.
board.
And and I wanna be very careful with the phrase trying to fit in. Cause I don't try to fit in. I
Yeah.
really don't. I mean, anybody that know me since, I said I was gonna have a break in my village with my mother one time so she could tell the stories of me when I was younger. I've always been this way, kind of my own little soldier. But, so I wanna be careful with that because it's really, sometimes it's just survival, right? I mean, when you are on these jobs and different things like that, you have to do certain things, right? if you're gonna keep that job, or you're gonna become, and that's across the board, not just for race, but just period, right? It's certain things that are expected, so sometimes it's not even us trying to fit in, it's just like, okay, I just wanna eat, right? I wanna live, and this is where I'm at, so this is what I have to do. But because I am an equal opportunity person, I wanna talk about this other side of it. Cause we talked about like different issues we've had with mostly, people who happen to be Caucasian or, even so, I mean, I've had a different experience with people that were not Black, right? But I wanna talk about some of the experiences within the Black community.
I mean, yeah, I've had it both ways. Like what you said, like trying to fit in, I used to say for years as a joke, like Black women don't like me, especially because I was like light skin, and then like I am kind of goofy and I'm super loud and like confident and I conduct myself. Like I was telling my kid's dad and his mom the other day, we were talking about colorism because like I said, my daughter's mixed, but she somehow turned out darker than both of us. So like he used to say that as a joke, and finally I was like, don't comment on my kid's skin tone, like don't make comments about how she's darker and XYZ, like that's not cool.
Cause we give you a complex.
And I was like, colorism's a thing, especially in the Black community. And one time I was in Saginaw, and I remember I thought it was so cute, and it was like when you did like little tendrils in the front, like hair half up down. And this woman called me the light-skinned hoe. Oh, which I'll laugh now, but it like hurt my feelings so bad. For no reason, like literally, because like you could tell, like I felt pretty and I was like happy. Like I'm not exaggerating when I say that this one girl hit the splits and took a microphone and said, "Don't do me, bitch," and made eye contact with me. Like B word, sorry. So,
I haven't sworn yet.
no, I know, I wasn't sure.
No, you're okay. You're okay.
But like, and I was like terrified. Like literally, I was at this club and I was like terrified, and I was like, these women like hate me, like skin hoe. Like I was like, what? And then I was talking to one of my friends like weeks later, and he was like, I don't know what happened to you there. You kind of like lost yourself. And I was like, literally, a woman called me light skin hoe. Like I'm not speaking up. Like I felt like I like curled into myself, So it's like I've had struggles in the Black community too, because they would always.
Well, that's what I want to talk about,
Yeah.
because I mean, it's a real thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a real thing, and as you talked about, that fitting in and kind of where you're accepted. And luckily for you, Brandon, I mean, there was a crew that grew up here.
Still hang out.
Well, yes. And what's interesting is that, especially when Dow here in Midland brought in like a horde of Black people, right? But that was during that time where everybody was trying to, affirmative action, all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
They were bringing people in, shipping people. They were recruiting for people, and so it was a group of people here. So that was actually a fortunate thing for yourself. But I mean, I'm sure even in that group, you guys have talked about even sometimes being, because I know some people would intentionally get, marry or be with a Black woman from like not the hood, but just, yeah, because they wanted to prove that they were Black enough. So, I mean, talk about that.
So after I graduated, I moved back to Flint.
Mm-hmm.
And, pretty much every summer when I went back home, I was, white boy, all of those type of things.
My kids, yeah, all that, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Once again, I leaned into it. All right, I'll show you how Black I am. You know what I mean? It was kind of one of those type of things. But for the most part, I'm kind of like you. I just am who I am. So, the white girl, now my wife, she came with me everywhere.
Yeah.
She's been everywhere with me. And it was just one of those things that I think she would say it too. We're more accepted there than here. Once they, in Flint, just
okay.
more Black people.
Yeah.
Once they check her out, when we first get there, it's, he come ready with his white girl.
Which is, it just is what it is. It just is what it is.
And then it was like, oh, she cool. You know what I mean?
Yes, that's literally how our communities are. I mean, for the most part. I mean, you always have some people that don't like people to fix some things, but for the most part, I remember that even like with people in my family, when they brought home, white women, we didn't care. We just looked like what's going what? Because they don't tell you, right? They show up and you like, oh, and then she started, because down south, we play dominoes and stuff and spades, and once she can get in there and at least sit there quietly, if you're not gonna play, sit there quietly, and it was like, okay, she's cool. So yeah.
I was the white girl, and that was my experience.
So how was that? Because I mean, you were in an interracial relationship.
Yeah. I mean, I sort of like what you said, Brandon. Like here, so many looks, stares, comments. all the time. And then Braylon's biological dad's from Muskegon, and I lived there for a time, and I was home, like, I think maybe a day. They were like, who are you? And then it was home after that.
Yeah.
And
Well, good for
still,
you.
him and I are not together, and still, I have that relationship,
Yes.
so.
Yeah. JT, what's your experience?
I've seen quite a bit. So I've seen it growing up, the dynamics when you talk about the restaurants experience, but even like just the population of the place that I grew up with. I've seen the looks from the black, I've seen the looks from the
So let
white.
me ask you before you continue, did you
Yeah.
grow up in a predominantly anything like black or white community?
Fort Huron, Michigan, it's
Okay.
predominantly white,
Yeah.
but it's very pretty segregated. Like you go to the north end of town where all the businesses, the mall and everything is, and then the south end, South Park and all that stuff is predominantly where most of the African American population stays.
Okay.
And so you know, just growing up, I've seen it, and obviously I experienced it. My best friends were black. Darius and Matt, shout out, you know what up. My best friend since elementary school, basically, played sports together. Really, probably, as I reflect now, would have had a much harder time identifying with the black population if I wasn't athletic.
That's true. Wow.
And so, like,
Which is a whole nother
Yeah.
conversation,
right.
but.
And so, like, there was that commonality. I
Yes.
didn't talk. You know, I didn't grow up in South Park. I was more like Midtown. Had a white mother. My father was not like, he didn't grow up using the N-word or anything like that. Like that's a culture that I
Yeah.
picked up in my childhood,
Yeah.
or not in my childhood, but like with my friend group and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so I didn't speak like them. And there was just always this separation. And it was, you know, people accepted me and I stuck with them, and people didn't accept with me. They stick with me, and I kind of understood. So yeah.
It's just so hard. I mean, because when I first moved here, I was a cosmetologist and I did a lot of, young black girls hair here. And all the black girls would tell me that they never would get asked out for prom, never. They were always overlooked. And, cause where I'm from, it was, and boys would comment on your body and all that kind of stuff, which is, not good or bad. I'm not going into that, but I'm just saying, you were seen. That's the point I'm trying to make. They liked you, and even if you didn't like them back, it was that, oh, hey girl, it's like, hey, okay, you know what I mean? You feel good.
Felt beautiful.
Yeah, so I could not imagine growing up in an environment where people didn't even, because they would tell me they felt invisible.
I got told I was pretty for a black girl, like more than once.
Oh.
I
Oh,
did.
really?
Yeah, like,
Oh.
you're so cute for a black girl.
What does that mean?
It means I'm
What
light
does that
skinned.
mean?
It means I'm light skinned, so I'm like acceptable version of a black person.
That is just, when they would tell me these stories, because I'm doing their hair and people share, and I would just stand there like, I couldn't imagine being invisible. I couldn't imagine that growing up that way. And they would always talk about that. All the black boys would, go after white girls. So they developed a complex about themselves because they didn't feel like
Sure.
they were even accepted within their own
Yeah.
communities.
0% of black women that I graduated with live in the city. 0.
Yeah.
And they ain't coming back.
And probably left fast.
Yeah.
Every single one that you talk to go, no.
See ya. Well, I told those girls one thing, because I believe in like self-talk, right? And pumping people up, because I'm like, honey, you are beautiful. And they were always like athletic and stacked. I'm like, girl, I said, let me tell you something. When you go off to college,
Yes.
and the boys see you, and you, educated, just they had the total package. I'm like, trust me, you will be celebrated. You will be celebrated. Unfortunately, here you aren't, and that's okay. You will be. But I couldn't imagine growing up not having anybody say, oh, you're beautiful, or to say you're beautiful for a black girl. Like, what
In their defense, I was like boyish looking until like 2018. So like it might have not even been a race thing. It might have just been literally. You know what I mean? Like,
well, I would say these girls were
those
no switch.
other girls, like that's some racism. Me,
And do we always think it's racism? Like seriously, like, especially for young boys? Like, do we think it's racism, or do we think that people navigate with who you're comfortable with?
It's like, yeah,
Right.
growing up in this
Yes,
environment.
yes. I wanna hear, cause I'm curious.
I'm a reformed whore. It's the best way to explain it.
I love her.
Okay.
I like that.
It was one of those things, especially when I got here, that would have been 93. So
Okay.
I get here in 93. Now that I'm older, I sit back and think about all of these things.
Wow.
And I think it's one of those, it was the beginning of like MTV with hip hop and like,
Yeah.
so I was the black kid.
And my children were.
And then I was like,
And
oh, so me being the black guy it just falls in
Works
your
to
lap.
your advantage, yeah.
So once again, I lean into it. I lean all the way into it.
Yeah. And you know what, but I wanna say something about that really
Okay.
quick. Because I find that so interesting, because whenever I talk to people about these black experiences, whenever they say they lean into being black or they live into a stereotype, it's always a negative.
Very.
And that's the part that makes my heart hurt. Because it's always this, the stereotype is usually a negative stereotype,
Yep.
right? Because when you say, and then when people say, well, you're acting white, it's usually a positive.
Yeah,
Like, you know, you speak a certain way. And it's just so interesting how even within ourselves, right, we have these indoctrinations that we don't even realize are there, because we feed into it just as much because it's a part of the society, right? Because I remember even with my one of my sons, he had grew his hair out and was going to cut it. He was contemplating cutting it. He told his friends, I think, oh, Don, man, you supposed to have a fro.
What?
And I'm like, I remember when he told me that, I was like, you cutting this off? I'm like, no, yeah, because, but I asked him, and I asked, like, you know, what does that mean? What does that mean? And they enjoyed and kind of lived vicariously through him this experience of being black. And I'm like, what does this mean? So, I mean, even with that, and I know that you're being genuine because it's a real thing. We really do feed into these stereotypes that are typically a negative as opposed to,
Very much so.
because what's the positive stereotype?
You got me. No.
yeah, that's,
Oh,
yeah.
So the next question is,
I was just gonna say, I think a lot of the black girls were family.
exactly, that's true.
You know what I mean? Like,
So, okay, that is true, yes.
me, I talked to Nikki today, that's my family. So we were so close that it was like,
That the black people are family.
yeah.
When you have a small group, that makes sense. And then if you look at somebody as your sister, you're not trying,
And the way I was living didn't,
fit into things. Right,
That's my
right.
sister. I do what I do over here.
No, I guess I didn't think about that. When you had those small sects within communities, you see them as family sometimes. But do you think that sometimes a little bit, let's just keep it real.
Yep.
I wanna keep it real. Do you think sometimes that they just weren't attracted to you? And not you in particular, but just some of the black, cause I talked to some of the black boys here and I asked them, why don't you date little whoever over here? Oh, she's not pretty.
I didn't want to act right.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
I just wanted,
To do what you did.
Yeah.
Okay.
and I knew my mama know, your mama, I know how this whole thing works.
That makes sense.
So
No,
I
that
could be
makes
who, whatever, and
Those
it just was
connections.
what it was.
Okay,
So-
I hear that. I hear that.
my baby has a type. Black girls.
Oh.
Already.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah, like straight up.
Yeah.
So,
So how does he navigate through that? I mean, I know he's young, but still,
Well,
like, there's not.
he gets exposure through TV
Oh,
because there aren't very many
Mhm.
other black people here, but I'm so proud of him for like, cause it could be really easy when you're raised by two white people to just like adopt that piece of
Yeah,
who you
sure.
are, and he is so not, and I am so freaking proud of him for that.
I mean, but, and just let me play the other side of
Yep,
this.
go ahead.
Even if he did, and that goes back to JT's point, is that that's still part of him too.
Yeah.
I mean, you get what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
it's part of him too, so that's the part, that's the hard balance, right? That's what we're talking about in regards to,
Yeah, so it's so much part of him though,
sure,
that like it's what he's grown up with, that he like has to work to like find that other piece of
Yeah,
him,
which is
which is what I see come out of him.
yeah.
Do you know what, does that
No,
make sense?
No, I get that totally.
And he has two white brothers, and he has, 4 sets of white grandparents. And so he's working to find that piece of him that he wants to
No, I get
identify
it.
with. So I think,
No, I get it totally.
it's cool for me to watch him
Yeah.
become that.
How is that? How is that? And JT, maybe you can speak on it too. And Tate with Bray being basically the only Black person, right, within his household.
Mhm.
And then having siblings that are white. How does that work sometimes? Is there any things with that? I don't know, JT, you had that same experience or not, or?
I was the only child. So I don't. I didn't really consider how I identified, or how, like, that I had a choice to identify as something else, or that I was something else, until I got to college. And I guess for story's sake, there was this white girl that I was dating, and she was an RA, and she did a program. It's called The Wrong Side of the Tracks. And this program is where basically everybody's in a room, there's a line across it. So when you first get in the room, you sit at tables, and it's like, you have cards, and it says white, Black, Hispanic, Latino, rich, poor, and you write down the first thing. Gather all the cards. If you identify as Black, please step to the wrong side of the tracks. And then it read off like, oh, loud, scary, aggressive, like
The different
all
stereotypes that come
yeah,
along
all
with
the
that.
different stereotypes, and it's basically like throwing darts. But the idea behind the program was, we've got this connection. So if I'm stepping across here, we're looking eye to eye, and you're listening to, and I'm hearing all of the things that are being said, and you're like, that's not JT, right? And I'm like, you're not saying those things about me, but now you can see it and feel it, right? So anyway, program aside, after the program, the girl said, I saw that you stepped across for being Black, but not white. And I'm like, yo, that's the first time I've ever thought about this. Like, I've never had the opportunity to identify as white.
Right.
She's just like, what would your mama think? And I'm like, I don't know that she would think anything else either. Like,
Right.
it's just not
Yeah.
something that we discussed or contemplated at all.
Yeah.
And so then I was just like, thanks for just blowing my
Right,
mind.
messing
Right?
up even
Like-
more.
I have a question. As the white mother, I think I would want to know, like, do you wish you guys had talked about that when you were growing up?
I don't know that I would have had the capacity to.
Mhm.
So I'm a believer in seeds. So perhaps we would have talked about it. It wouldn't have gone well, but that seed would have been planted for further in my development, and we could revisit. And so absolutely, I just had a conversation with a friend today about family and stuff, and things that we may or may not have talked about. And I think if you got a question or want to contemplate it, like, plant the seed.
Sure.
I think transparency is beautiful,
Yeah.
right? And because there's so many things that we go through as adults, I can't imagine being a child having to deal with that. Because again, I grew up in Cincinnati. I mean, everybody in my class was predominantly Black. I mean, you would have some white people or like Hispanic, speckled, sprinkled in here and there, but mostly it was Black. So it wasn't until like coming to Midland was such a culture shock for me in so many ways. So much to where when I first went to the mall, I was looking for an elevator because I had never been to a place without a second floor. I had never been to a mall without a second floor. And I'm looking, I'll never forget the lady. I'm like, where's the elevator? You know what I mean? And she was like, honey, what is it? She just couldn't even believe it. But I've never, like the mall here was like a plaza to me. Like I've seen big malls,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? So little stuff like that, and just like, the lights going off, at 10, like 9 o'clock when I first went there, they were blinking.
Flashing.
Yeah.
I'm like, what is happening? You know what I mean? No delivery except for pizza. I mean, it was just little things like that beyond color and stuff. It was just the culture, right? That was so different for me. So getting acclimated, not to mention it snowed like 14 days straight, like a blizzard when I was here. I was like, where am I? And I remember and this is a God honest truth, I said this, but I remember a friend of mine called me and asked me how I was doing here. And I was like, honey, it is white outside and white inside. I had never seen so much. I remember walking into Meyer, because Meyer was fairly new at that time. Meyer is not that old. And I remember walking in, And you know, you just see back. And it was just I had never seen that before in my life. It was such a culture shock. And I remember just being like, where am I at? Why am I here? You know what I mean? It was a lot for me. And yeah, I mean, I don't know if you experienced that, but it was a lot.
It was weird. Like I'd say like the first week I was here, I was just sitting there like, huh.
Right? It just was so different, right?
Well, we went from, you know, a class of 30 that was, you know, 28 black people and 2 white people. And then there was the reverse. It was,
Yeah.
you know, me and one other dude. And it was like, all right, you're going to be my friend.
And not only that, but also the culture of Midland, right?
Yes.
I mean, it was just different, right? I mean, yeah.
My clothes were different. The way I talked was different. It was a full-on change.
Yeah. Yeah. So how do you guys navigate through this stuff? Like, how do you, because I know for me, I've been here 17 years. Wow, I've been here 17 years. And, I mean, I'm still getting acclimated to certain things, right? As you move through different circles, you still have to navigate, right? But like I said, when I first moved here, it was a culture shock for me. It was just like, I mean, I remember people asking, was I from the city? They would always ask me that because the way I dressed. I mean, I dressed totally different. I mean, not super different, but I was from the city, right? So even like when we went to a wedding, a funeral, we would dress up. That's the culture that came from, right? Where you would be dressed up. And I mean, I went to a funeral wedding, people had on flannel, which is no problem. I mean, it's no problem, but it was different. I never saw that before. Like, it was just, you knew when you went to a wedding or a funeral, you came sharp, right? And that's what we consider sharp. So it was just different. It's not bad, it's just different. So how do you guys, navigate through that, especially in today's climate of race, right? Everybody's talking about DEI, where everybody is. Almost where I'm tired of talking about it, because it's just like, it seems like a trend now.
Where's the action?
Yeah.
But anyway.
Yes, it seems like a trend where everybody just saying DEIJ, DEI, and it's like, what? I mean, just put a poster up and move on, because
You
What
got
are
to
you actually gonna do?
Yeah. That's
So-
our next table discussion. We're gonna tackle
Yeah,
that
so
one.
how do you guys, and still stay positive, right? I mean, because you have to really work to see the good in people, despite what you see in people.
I think I'm at a stage in my life, like it took me, like I'll say it was probably like my late 20s before I was like, I'm actually like 100% unapologetically myself. Like everywhere I go, I don't care if it's not black enough, not white enough.
Yeah.
And then especially after having my daughter, and then her family tree is also white people and black people and this, and it's so confusing because like, so her dad is mixed, and then he has a younger brother who's mixed, who like looks like her, like they're a similar skin tone, like he's a dark skinned man, you wouldn't think he's mixed type thing. And then she has this light skinned goofy mom, and then I have black sisters and then white parents, so like I'm just pretty much like, we're us, we don't owe anybody any explanation as to like why this is the way the family's
How
set
old
up.
did you say when you got to that?
I'm probably like late 20s. Like when I got my house, thanks Brandon, me and my dad would go to Home Depot and we were doing stuff, and my dad is like literally an old white man. So like my favorite thing would be like picking out carpet samples together, and I'd be like, Dad, why do you think they think we're here? Like, do you think like I'm like your sugar baby? You know what I mean? Like, what do you think they think are connect? Because he'd like talk for me. I don't know anything, so it'd be like, can you help us? We're looking, and I was like, they're probably like, ugh. You know? You know what I mean? And it's like, whereas before when I was younger, I was never embarrassed or ashamed of my family, but I just felt weird, like in my head, I was like, what do they all think?
But that's okay, so I'm glad you said that,
Yeah.
because that's a real thing. And
Yeah.
People don't like always want to acknowledge that or talk about it, but that is a weird.
Like I just felt weird, like what
Yeah.
are they, and now it's like, whereas before it's like, oh, what do they think? Now I'm like, huh, I wonder what they think. You know what I mean? Like it's funny.
It's funny now.
Yeah, I don't care. I don't like.
But I had a friend that had a white mother, and I remember them saying that they would pretend like in certain circles that wasn't, like, if people didn't know,
Yeah,
not because they were ashamed of their mom, but
right.
just they were afraid of what people
They
would
don't want to
say.
deal with it.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to say it's as easy as being like, well, just be confident and get over it. Like it literally took years.
Well, you just said they're late 20s.
Yeah,
I mean,
like
yeah.
forever to finally like, and that's not even dealing with race. That's just like finding self-love. Like my whole life, people always been like, you're so loud, you talk a lot. And finally I was like, I'm 28. Yep, I do. Like I'm loud and I talk a lot. Like,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, I do. As opposed to being like, oh, should I talk lower? Like, I'm not going to talk lower for anybody. Do you know what I mean? And then my daughter is literally like, after I had her, I was very much like, okay, like, you have to get confident wearing your natural hair around the house, and you have to like learn like when you get hyperpigmentation and dark marks because you're light skin, like, how do we treat this for her sake? So she only grows up like, the other day she told me she hates getting her hair brushed. That's a different table. Me and you will talk. But like now when I brush, I go, oh my gosh, you're so beautiful. And like she loves herself. So like she's looking in the mirror and she was like, my hair is so beautiful. And like she had her little brush, stuff like that. Or when we were talking about being brown, like she was like, I'm brown. And I was like, and it's so pretty. Oh my gosh, you're the prettiest brown I've ever seen. Like teaching her early on to love herself. So like when people like
Well, you don't want to
knock
know
at
what
that,
yeah.
You're
You know
giving
what I
her
mean? Like,
tools
yeah.
that you didn't have.
exactly, like self-love early on, so that even if somebody takes a little bit out of her cup, it's still overflowing.
That's overflowing.
You know what I mean, versus starting with
Yeah.
half fill.
The community, I think, so you're talking to people, it's very interesting to hear, like, that have been here, right? And then here I am, and I've had limited experience with the Midland community too, because like, I have not been going anywhere because it's a pandemic, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
we've had some experience, at CMU, which is very similar to Midland. Mine is like,
Yeah.
Midland is more like entrepreneurship, and which I love, right? But I grew up watching the dynamics of the public interact with my family and address my mother. My father's kind of off to the side, and if my father got to speak, then it's a time when it's like, oh damn, he's got to fix
Yeah.
something, right? But then I see this when I go around with my wife, right? It's like, you're nobody. I'm like, I'm new to this community. I want to meet people, right?
Yeah,
Like,
right.
if I'm not initiating it, I'm not getting it.
Yeah.
Everybody's addressing my wife.
Oof, wow.
Is your wife white?
Yes, she is. Yeah.
Wow. I should have assumed
And,
that.
Yeah,
and
Your
so
statement,
it's
but
like,
yeah.
yeah, and I know that, and it's normal to me because I've seen it since I was a kid, right? I grew up with it, and we got kind of that same. So it's like, this is normal, but it's also like, damn.
See, and I wonder if that's a race thing. Did you have something to say? I just wonder if that's a race
I was
thing.
just thinking,
It's a subconscious, right?
Well, no, I don't even know if it's just that because they do the same thing with my husband. And he's black as, I mean, he's about my
I used to,
complexion.
when I worked at a hotel, like one of my favorite gigs, me and the chief engineer at the time were super cool, and he's this little white man. And he would be in like a tan shirt and like paint covered slacks, and I'd be like in a blouse and dressed up. And if somebody's like, I have an issue, actually it didn't have to be him. If anybody besides me was next to me at the front desk, the guest went to them first every time. And they'd say, are you the manager? Or they'd say, I have an issue with XYZ. And they'd go, well, you want to talk to her. Or one man, and I shared this story before, but he was like, there was issue with this. And like within like 2 clicks, I said, you're right, I fixed it, it's all set. And he goes, well, if it's not fixed, I do have the manager's business card. So I said, oh, do you have like my business card? And then he looked at it and looked at my name tag and said, oh, I guess it is you. And I said, yeah, I guess you'd just be complaining to me about me. And it's like, because he couldn't believe that a black woman could possibly be the person to fix this. And even if I was line level, I did resolve your issue, and you still like took a shot at me to be like, I'll check with somebody superior to you just to make
Right.
sure.
Wow. I love that you
Like,
took a shot back,
Yeah,
though.
like whatever.
Yes.
same thing. That's my life.
Yeah,
I answer
Wow.
phone. Once again, I do lean in. I lean into the voice very hard. So when I show up at your house, it's usually, that's Brandon?
Yeah, yeah.
I was like scared going on job interviews because my name is literally Tamara Lane Anderson, so it's like white, and then I'd be like, yeah, thank you, I'll be there at 3.
Well, my mother,
And then
my
you
mother
get there
tells
and
that
I'm
story
like,
all the time.
yeah.
That's why she named me Erin. Because my mother grew up down south in Texas, okay? They used to have to do things for white families, dance and take care of their children, call them ma'am and sir. So she grew up with, colored only signs and things of that, drinking powder. So she told me that she intentionally named me Erin. So for one, she didn't want anybody to give me a nickname. And then for two, she wanted to make sure that, when people saw my name, they didn't make any assumptions. You don't know if it's white or black, right?
Yeah.
So to give you some type of opportunity. And again, that's the part that's so disheartening, that people have to go and think so much about things like that just to afford their children a certain type of
Yeah.
opportunity, you know? Yeah.
If there's people that don't know where this community is, like I am nervous if I'm driving down M20, for example, and something happens to my car and I have to stop by this house that has Trump. sign
Yeah.
or,
Waving, especially
you know,
him.
like,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
My
it's
son counts them.
Michigan,
My
right?
son
Like,
counts the
they're
flags.
everywhere, but it's not just the Trump sign, because I don't have a problem
No.
with people that vote for Trump, but like, it's become a symbol.
Uh-huh.
If there's a Trump and a swastika, if there's a Trump and the Confederate flag, like, it's everywhere.
When I
I'm
lived
like,
on
oh my
M20,
goodness, am I safe?
The road I turned on every morning for work, they had a swastika hanging like every morning. I would see it.
What is
Before
it?
It's
The one
it's
up
on your
towards-
way to Mount Pleasant. It's like
Oh,
not
no.
quite a highway, but 55.
Yeah.
Can I just, so
No, please.
what has been all of your realities for your entire lives is something that I'm just dipping into with
Sure.
Sharon. And so I'm in a state of rage still.
Yeah.
Straight
Yeah.
up freaking rage.
Yep.
I like rage cried at the school board meeting the other day because I just couldn't
Good for
keep it
you.
together. Because I just, what you guys have almost unfortunately become normalized to.
Yeah.
And
And
desensitized sometimes,
desensitized. Absolutely, like,
which is unfortunate.
I still every freaking time I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Well, because
What?
if every time something happened, if I acted like that,
I know.
I would go, no, I'm
We've
serious,
had
I'm just,
ulcers.
that's
You
the
go
thing.
nuts.
Yeah, and that's the thing is that we just have to compartmentalize and then also realize where we want to spend our energy. Like if I see somebody that's a total bigot and just like full of nonsense, I'm not arguing with them for
Yeah.
what.
Yeah.
Well,
I know. I mean, but again, you would
Yeah.
just, and, you know, and I just want to just make sure I say too is that, you know, we're talking about Philly because we live here, but we know this happens all over.
Broad.
So I don't want it to make
Yeah,
sure
we're-
this is
yeah.
no, it's so.
I just like
It's
I
not
like
an
to,
attack on Midland.
no,
for
I like to
sure.
just make
Yeah.
certain disclaimers, but also I want us to share this is an experience and this is stuff that people actually say does not happen here. And it's like, I mean, give me a break. You know, even with, you know, I know we kind of touched on code switching, but code switching is a real thing, you know, and it's really unfortunate because I know for myself, I even temper my voice. Like I actually talk like this
Absolutely.
when I'm in certain settings because when I talk with my real, like my voice, right? People like look like I'm upset and I'm not. So I intentionally, because I always want to be heard, whatever I'm sharing, whatever, you know, in whatever space. So I know that that is a barrier for some people, right? Because they get defensive or they think something is coming after that.
Do you remember the first time we talked, I told you, I was talking to a Black mom of a couple of MPS students that had graduated, and she looked me dead in my eyes and she said, it has to be people who look like you that go in to these school board meetings and to talk with the superintendent, because when I go in there, she was saying, like speaking about herself, she was like, when I go in there, I'm automatically viewed as an angry Black woman
Yeah.
and nothing's going to happen. She said, it has to be you.
That's why
And
to
I
this
took that
day-
on my shoulders and I literally that day, I was like, okay, like, because I never thought about that.
To this day, I will have my dad like say, I had something and they overcharged me and I knew which sometimes like if I'm in a mood, I'll do it. But like, for the most part, if I just like want my money back or whatever, like I will send like old white father to sweet talk them versus me because what you said, I'm an angry Black woman, where if he doesn't, he's an assertive man, you know? And
Yeah.
that was even when I did work in management, like I felt like oftentimes I was like treated as an angry Black person or I'm rage filled, I'm this, where if anybody else conducted themselves the same way, they're just assertive. Or I remember one of my bosses at the time joking with a guest about how bossy I was. And I know bossy itself is not a bad word, but like it does have a negative connotation. We primarily use it towards females. The implication is like you're sassy and stubborn and hard-headed about it. And I was just like I said, it's little teeny microaggressions like that get to you. Stuff
Yeah,
like
it's
that.
just when you have to think so hard.
Yeah,
About just being you.
Yeah.
About just being, and just making sure that you are received and, or you could just say to hell with it, right? And just be like, I don't care if I'm received, but then sometimes you do miss the opportunities for whatever reason. So you have to just make that choice. I mean, you have to essentially make the choice. how will I show up?
But it is awesome of you to assume the responsibility too, like to realize the impact you could have and like to be a
Well,
talent.
because we know throughout history, that's a proof of
That's
fact.
like what we
I mean,
need.
no, I'm just saying throughout history, that has actually happened.
Right.
Yeah.
Where when, Caucasians, activists or advocates stood up and for certain things, change did happen. I mean, it's just a historical thing.
It's like,
But I want to conclude this because I literally could talk about this all night. And because it's just it's a good conversation for me because it's not bashing anything. It's just sharing experience. And I think that people, especially in marginalized communities, whatever that could be, because marginalized goes past color, right? If you're in a marginalized community, you need to have spaces where you can just release. You have to, or you will be filled with rage. You have to be able to talk it out amongst people that understand and will receive it and not fight you and dismiss, right? So I appreciate you all for sharing your experiences, and I'm gonna have you guys kind of, if you wanna like leave on one note, or you wanna share something before we leave, that would be great. Brandon?
What do I have? Empathy. Just empathy. Like I said, it's super simple to me.
Yeah.
And since it is, I'm just irritated now. So don't talk to me about it. Leave me alone.
Let me sell houses.
I want to sell houses, and like I said, I'll just stay in.
I'll keep talking.
You,
That's what I will keep talking,
keep
but
talking.
no, it's exhausting, and I get that, and that's why at times we have to kind of carry each other, right? Because sometimes it's like, I'm gonna tap me in, I got you, because it is heavy. So thank you for that, Tay.
Well, I have the platform. Stop coming back from spring break and holding your arm up to Black people and saying I'm almost your color.
Oh,
Well, we're
that's
here.
your-
That's my one note. That's what I would like to leave with. Stop doing that.
Okay, thank you for that. Thank you for that
It
deep,
needed to
that
be said.
deep, profound,
Once again,
Tay.
that's how I end up
Yeah.
back at the house. It's like I stepped out for a minute and then, all right, go back home.
The other Tay.
Okay, so I have sort of something like that. Don't touch my son's hair, but number
Yeah, we
two,
need to talk about that.
number two, I think my big thing is just because it's not my reality doesn't mean it's not someone else's reality and vice versa. So my reality is not the only reality.
Yeah,
And so I think if people realize that,
yeah,
the empathy piece would be a lot
Yeah.
easier,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
if we just can look, like you said, be curious and not just shut down just because we haven't experienced it ourselves, I think that could make a big difference.
that's so true. Because you don't even have to like say anything. You can just say, "Oh, I'm sorry."
My son's reality is not my reality.
Yeah,
It's not. We're really, really different lives, right? But
yeah.
I know that his is real because I see it.
Yeah.
And
But even to that point, even if you don't see it, if the person doesn't see it, you can still say,
Yes.
like, "Oh, I'm sorry." And
Yes.
there's people, you don't have to add anything else to it. I'm not asking you to solve it. I'm not asking you to do anything. I'm just asking
See it.
just acknowledge what I'm saying. Like, okay, you know what I mean? I'm sorry you're having to go through that, and go on about your business. You know what I
Pretty
mean?
simple.
Like, very simple. JT.
Yeah, I guess I would say just that, be curious, don't teach. Share your story, hear other story, and find commonalities,
Yeah.
because that's gonna lead to empathy.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank all of you all for coming today. It's been great.
Yeah, thank you.
I love this kind of stuff. I mean, because my husband hates. I talk so much at home. I know he loves when I get out and can talk to other people. No, I really do. I appreciate you all. I appreciate Mo for helping out with tech stuff. And I want to give a shout out to Remax of Midland for allowing us to use their space. And Dan came over here, during his son's game, got away, let us in. Carrie came by to a Remax. So I want to make sure I thank both of them for helping out with this and making this a success as it is. So again, thank you guys. I appreciate you all. And thank you all for watching. Bye.
Say, but also, Aaron